If we get that kind of correction, what does that mean for the Fed? I mean, is the plunge protection team still in place?
Well, I think by necessity they are, and it's going to be interesting this meeting because of the doves and the hawks. I haven't seen the Fed this divided in I think since the 1980s, and I believe that the meeting today and tomorrow, the Fed will basically compromise and say, look, let's make an announcement here about how tapering is going to work. That is, are we going to reduce purchases by 10 billion a month, or whatever the formula is they come up with, and then they're going to leave the tapering date to be determined. And I think they'd like to see at least another month's worth of employment figures, and maybe 2 months, which it's interesting. The employment figure comes out right after the November meeting. So they may not actually be making the announcement of when the taper is implemented until December. But, I don't think they're going to tell us today, but I do think they will give us an outline of how it's going to work.
Well, and you do think they'll taper. You think they're going to, I mean, if not ever get to shrinking the balance sheet, they're at least going to reduce the speed with which they add to it. Will they ever raise rates?
Someday. I think that the dot plot's too aggressive. The people that are talking about a rate increase in 2022 is too much. When you look at the fiscal side of the equation, we're going from having a lot of fiscal stimulus to now fiscal drag. And, there's a lot of questions around what kind of legislation will get through the House and the Senate. I don't expect to see a $3.5 trillion spending program by any stretch of the imagination. So, given that backdrop, the prospects for 2022, we're not talking about a recession, but we're not talking about the kind of economy that would continue to overheat. And someday, we will address the supply chain issues and prices will start to stabilize and even come down again. So I think a 2022 rate hike is just a little bit too much. I think really late 23 or 24 is more likely to be the time the Fed actually can institute one.
Well, and what about, the fiscal cliff that you're talking about? Do we ever again see the kind of fiscal impulse that we had during the pandemic? Or is that normalized? And do we continue to see trillions and trillions of dollars in spending?
Well, I think eventually the printing press runs out of money. And the reason for that is the inflation pressures that it causes. But I think that the reality is that the amount of stimulus that we got during the pandemic is unprecedented, and we're not likely to ever return to that unless we're in another crisis. So I'm not really looking for Washington to provide a lot of support. And if we do get these massive spending bills, there seems to be a willingness to raise taxes on various classes of the society and corporations. And history shows that raising taxes actually reduces output and productivity over time. So I think that would be a mistake to try to tax ourselves into prosperity.